And welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and I have my first deck tech from Streets of New Capenna here, and is going to be Rocco Cabaretti Caterer, which might surprise a few people. I think it's an interesting commander. X, red, green, and a white elf druid. 3/1. When Rocco Cabaretti Caterer enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you may search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So your commander is essentially a Court of Calling, which is pretty good. I think having a Court of Calling in the command zone is not too shabby. A lot of people, I think this commander is a little boring. It is a tad boring, maybe. I would have liked to see them not do the casting. Just when it enters the battlefield, go get a creature out of your library. Obviously, if you didn't cast it though, the X is going to be 0, but you could build around that. There are a few creatures in the game that have a casting cost of 0, so you could blink your commander and go get a Mem Knight out of your library or something. I understand why they put the cast there. It would have been nice maybe if they didn't. I will say though, you can still do that when you cast it, right? So a Dryad Arbor, for instance, right? People like to do that with Green Sun Zenith. You can do it here as well, where you just cast your commander for 3, go get a creature that costs 0, put it directly into play, like that Mem Knight or Dryad Arbor or whatever. And I really think there's a lot you can do with this commander. This, to me, feels like a commander because you're just searching your library for a creature. There's a lot you can do there. So my Dragonlord Jamoka deck, for example, I picked that commander mostly for the fact that my opponents can't cast spells on my turn. So it's a little bit of a combo deck. Well, it's a lot of a combo deck. Painter's Servant is a really important card in that deck. And I almost had considered swapping out this, making it a Naya deck, and using Rocco Cabaretti Caterer as the commander for that deck, because I can use Rocco to go get Painter's Servant and put it directly into play. So you could build a Painter's Servant, and Painter's Servant is a really powerful card that you can do a lot of stuff with. You can build a Painter's Servant deck with Rocco if you want to, as an example. There's also lots and lots of 2 creature combos out there, right? If you just go through and look at a lot of the combos out there involving creatures, there's probably a bunch of them that involve 2 creatures that you can tutor at least one of them with your Rocco, maybe both, right? So I think there is a lot of directions you can go with this commander. The important thing here though is that this is a cast trigger, so we want to be casting our commander a lot, right? If we actually build our deck around our commander, we cast it once and then we want to return it to our hand so we can cast it again, obviously, right? And as I was thinking about this commander, I wasn't super interested in the beginning. Okay, well, we want to be able to bounce to our hand so that we can cast it again. And I was like, okay, what about like a Kogla or something like that, right? That'd be a great fit because you can pay 1 and a green to return a human to your hand. But of course, Rocco is not a human, it's an elf. And then I thought, oh, wait a minute, isn't there a card that returns elves to your hand? And of course, it's Wirewood Symbiote. 1 green mana insect 1/1. Return an elf you control to owner's hand. Untap target creature, activate this ability only once each turn. So the activation for this cost is returning an elf you control to owner's hand, and this guy only costs 1 mana. So this deck, I'm going to build it so that the first thing I get is Wirewood Symbiote, right? For only 4 mana, I go get my Wirewood Symbiote. The first thing I get is my Wirewood Symbiote, and then as soon as my commander hits the battlefield, I instantly return an elf I control to owner's hand. I return my commander to my hand so that I can do it again. I just think that's such a perfect fit here. And that, essentially is the reason why I decided to go ahead and start building this deck. Temur Sabertooth is another one. Again, it costs 4, but it is a great option here where you can pay 1 and a green and return another creature you control to owner's hand. And of course, it gains indestructible in the end of turn. So if you can get that one out, that would be great too. Wirewood Symbiote obviously is the best option because it only is 1 mana. It's going to cost you 7 mana to tutor for the Temur Sabertooth. Although, of course, there are other ways to do that. The Wirewood Symbiote is only going to cost 1, and the activation is essentially 0, so that's the best option for this. You are obviously going to be casting your commander a lot. That is without question here, so you want cost reducers, and Centaur Omen Reader and Semblance Anvil are great here. This is a super creature heavy deck, right? I decided to go really creature heavy with this. There's 53 creatures in this deck, hardly any non-creature spells at all. So with our Semblance Anvil, we will imprint a creature on it, and then spells that we cast that share a card type with the exiled card cost 2 less to cast cast. So our creature spells are going to cost 2 less to cast, which is fantastic for a lot of the creatures in our deck. But of course, our commander is going to cost 2 less. So now when we pay 5 mana into our commander, we can get a creature with mana value of 4, right? Centaur Omen Reader, when it's tapped, is also going to reduce our creature spells by 2. Ronus Monument will also work here. Green creature spells we cast cost 2 less to cast. And also when we cast a creature spell, target creature we control gets +2/+2 and gains trample end of the turn. So that can help with closing out the game because we are going to win by just attacking. Bard class is a really interesting one here. 1 in a green saga. Legendary creatures you control enter the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on them. I mean, that's not super relevant because we're going to be returning our commander to our hand all the time. We do have a few other legendary creatures in the deck though. More so we want the level 2 here, right? So by paying green and a red, we'll go to level 2 and legendary spells you cast cost a green and a red less to cast. This effect reduces only the colored mana. So now our commander is only going to cost the white, right? White and X. The green and the red we don't have to worry about. So it's going to reduce that cost. And if we have out like Bard class and maybe a Semblance Anvil as well, man, we can start getting some really, really big creatures out of our deck for only paying a few mana. Our commander has an X in there. So we need Elementalist Palette and Unbound Flourishing. They're both going to be great here. Whenever you cast a spell with X in its mana cost, you put 2 charge counters on Elementalist Palette. And we will be casting our commander all the time. So this is going to be happening a lot, I think. This is just a mana rock that adds mana of any color when we tap it, but also we can tap it and add a colorless for each charge counter on it. Spend this only to cast X spells. That's fine. That's our commander. Unbound Flourishing is going to work great here as well. 2 in a green enchantment. Whenever you cast a permanent spell with mana cost that contains X, of course, that's our commander. We're going to double the value of X. So again, we pay 5 mana. Now we can get a 4-drop. And whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell or activate an ability, if the spell's mana cost or the ability's activation cost contains an X, copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. And we do have a couple of those in here. I ended up throwing in a couple just because this card is going to be great in the deck. We can also just get 1-drops that are really fantastic, like Serra Ascendant, Esper Sentinel, right? These are great 1-drop creatures that we can get pretty early in the game, right? If we ramp, say on turn 2, we untap, and on turn 3, we already have 4 mana and we can already go get that Serra Ascendant or that Esper Sentinel on turn 3. That's pretty darn good getting those early in the game. Mother of Runes, another fantastic 1-drop that we can get out of our library. Obviously, we are playing a toolbox creature deck, which I really love those kinds of decks. Birthing Pod style decks, right? So obviously we're going to put Birthing Pod in this deck. There is not a lot of non-creature spells in this deck, but Birthing Pod is one of them because it is just, I can't pass up on the value that you can get out of this. Hibernation's End and Yisan, the Wanderer Bard, are 2 other ways we can do this. And again, they all work the same way where they're sort of climbing up the mana value train. And so of course, for that reason, we need lots of 1-drops, 2-drops, 3-drops, and so on. I made sure there was a pretty even distribution there. So all of these will work really well in this deck, getting different creatures of different mana values depending on where we're at there. And of course, then we want the toolbox creatures, like a Dauntless Escort, for example, right? We want to make our team indestructible. That's going to be really important in any creature heavy deck. So this is a creature that we can toolbox out. We can get it into play to save our team. Collector Ophi and Drannith Magistrate, right? We're going to do a little bit of the stacks things here as well to shut down what our opponents are doing. That's always great. We don't have a lot of artifacts in this deck, so Collector Oath could be extra good. Peacekeeper's a great one if we don't want our opponents to be attacking, at least temporarily. I mean, we're going to win by attacking, but if there's a situation where things get out of hand, you know, rather than I go get a board wipe out of my deck, because you can't really do that in creature form, Peacekeeper will at least make it so that your opponents can't attack, right? 2 and a white. Human, 1/1 at the beginning of your upkeep. You have to sacrifice it unless you pay 1 and a white, so we can let this die at any time if we want to, and just creatures can't attack. That's it. Creatures just can't attack, period. So that can be really helpful in a lot of situations. I got Sanctum Prelate and Phyrexian Revoker in here. Again, just dealing with certain situations we might run into. There is no 1 mana value non-creature spells in this deck. I purposely did not put any in here because when Sanctum Prelate enters the battlefield, you choose a number and non-creature spells with that mana value cannot be cast. And I always wanted to put this guy in a commander deck, and this seemed like a good fit for it. So I purposely didn't put any 1 mana value non-creature spells so that you can just get this guy and name 1. So now all your your opponent's Path to Exiles or Nature's Claims or whatever won't be able to be cast. Their Soul Rings, right? This will shut down a lot of stuff in a lot of different decks. You can name something else if you want to. If you're worried about a board wipe, you could name maybe 6, something like that, because there's a lot of great board wipes at 6. Phyrexian Revoker as well. Just go get it if we want to shut down the activated abilities of some card that our opponents have. I threw Thalia, Garden of Thraben, in the deck, and you can go deeper here, right? Obviously, non-creature spells cost 1 more to cast, so this is going to hurt our opponent's non-creature spells. Hurts us as well, but of course, we don't have very many. We only have like 7 non-creature spells in this entire deck, so this isn't really going to hurt us much. It's going to hurt our opponents a lot, and you could go a lot deeper here. You could throw a Gaddock Teeg in this deck. I did not. You can if you want to. It is going to shut off. There's like 3 cards in this deck that I think won't be able to be cast with a Gaddock Teeg in play. I didn't go too much the stacks route. You could definitely go more that route if you wanted to. I also threw Cloudsteel Kirin in this deck. This card recently came out in Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. 2 and a white artifact creature equipment Kirin, 3/2 with flying. Equipped creature has flying and you can't lose the game, and your opponents can't win the game. It has reconfigure 5. So of course you can pay 5 to attach it to a creature, or you can unattach it and it becomes a creature again. And this I thought was just a great include because, you know, if you again get into a sticky situation that you don't necessarily have an answer for in creature form, because I put a whole lot of cards in this deck that are an answer in creature form, but sometimes, you know, your opponent's going to combo off. You don't have an answer for that. So what you can do is you can just go get this guy, equip it to your commander or whoever, and as long as it's equipped, you can't lose the game and your opponents can't win the game. So it is a way to hold back maybe some combo potential that your opponents might be playing. I think this is a pretty interesting deck, pretty interesting commander. It can get mana intensive, having to recast your commander all the time. You don't have to. I mean, you are just going to draw creatures organically and just play them if you want. You don't necessarily have to go search for them in your deck. I just like the option of I get to go get an answer out of my deck if I want to and put it directly into play, or just a really good creature like a Sarah Ascendant or something, just put it directly into play and start hammering my opponents with it. You know, how many times are you going to cast your Rocco in a game? I don't know. I mean, maybe a bunch, right? You get that Wirewood Symbiote right away. You could be casting it every single turn if you want. I just thought that was a really neat interaction there, and it sort of enticed me to go ahead and build this commander. So the deck list for this guy is in the description below. Check it out if you want to. Give it a spin, but that is it for today, and thanks for tuning in.